It's chick season, and if you're like me, you're done with the playpens, you're done with the dog crates, and you're certainly done with these boxes. Take a look at this brooder box we just built. It's 16 feet long, 32 square feet for these chicks. We built our own water system, our own food system, and a system to collect all of the shavings quickly with no mess. And the best part is, it was all under $250. Let's take a look. Surprise! We just welcomed 60 baby silky chickens to our household. But where do we put them? I asked my dad to assist with building 2 brooder boxes that needed to be 2 feet wide and 8 feet long. That's 32 square feet of space, which should be pretty sufficient to house these birds until they're ready to go outside. Let's dive into this brooder build.
The 2 brooder boxes would require 8 sets of legs, so that's where I started. I set the miter stop to ensure the lengths were identical and to speed up the cutting process. Each leg required 2 2x4s to set the height at 36 inches long and 24 inches wide. One leg done. Now that the legs have been assembled, I clamped an 8-foot 2x4 to each end of the leg to start the assembly of the base. Once the frame was built, I added additional support every 2 feet. Quick tip: when working alone, I clamped a 1x3 to the undercarriage of the brooder box so I could set my cross brace without moving while securing it in place. Once the base was complete, I mirrored the process for the second brooder box. Then I went outside to cut the plywood for the top. I wish I had a crosscut saw, but this really doesn't need to be that accurate. I screwed the tops on using 1.5-inch screws, spacing every 8 inches. Now that the base is done, I can move on to the top, and I got my partner back for this process. The timing couldn't have been more perfect.
Just like the base, we set up a miter saw stop so we could ensure the multiple cuts we had to make were identical, and it speeds up the process. As you know, cost is always a factor in any project, so we decided to rip a 2x4 in half to start building the frame of the lid. In doing so, we didn't compromise the strength. After ripping the 2x4s, we assembled the frame of the brooder box and secured it to the base. Now, a prerequisite to this build was easy access to the brooder box, so we came up with this design. It's simply 2 2x4s cut at 35 degrees, which were then fastened together.
Now, as you can see, this is going to be a pretty easy mechanism for lifting this lid. It's as simple as this. We have some old cabinet hardware from a previous project that we're going to mount handles onto the front here. Grab it, and then I'll devise some mechanism to keep the lid up so that it doesn't end up falling on anybody's head. But on to the next one.
Each box will have 2 lids because lifting an 8-foot lid would be way too heavy. Each lid is 4 feet wide and secured with a 1x3 tying the 3 pivot arms together. Then we got a little fancy with it and trimmed the excess off the 1x3 for purely aesthetic purposes. Now, in the spirit of repurposing what we have, we took leftover kitchen handles and secured them to the 1x3 to lift the lids. We finished it off by adding some additional bracing that would help to secure the wire mesh, which we then added later. The box itself is covered with 1/4-inch Luan. It was important to keep the brooder box light to allow for easy moving. The brooder box can be removed from the base, which was a key design feature given my basement doesn't have a bulkhead, and we may want to move this at a later date.
So brooder box 1 is complete. I now did the same exact thing on the second box until I reached a point where I was able to cover both boxes with chicken wire. I didn't need to use heavy-duty gauge wire given these were inside and there isn't any risk of any predators. This was secured using my new Ryobi staple gun, which made securing the wire mesh a breeze. To cut the wire, I used my metal wire cutoff saw attached to my grinder. Now most people would zip tie this wire together, but in the spirit of upcycling, this is the wire that the wire roll came wrapped up in. So I'm repurposing it in order to lash these two together. Now, chances of the birds getting out, slim to none, but it just makes for a neater install. So let's finish this up. The inside of the Brooder box needed to be easy to clean and maintain, and I had leftover vinyl flooring from another project that I glued to the base. So what's the next step here? Well, we want to put a floor in here that's easy to maintain, and again, in the spirit of recycling, these tiles came out of a wood shop that I had done previously. Pretty retro style colors, but they were left over and we're going to put them in the bottom of this chicken coop so it makes it easy to clean out. To secure the tile to the plywood, now the correct method would be using mastic, which I didn't have. My second go-to method is liquid nails. Didn't have that either. But I was hoping Titebond glue would do the trick, and so far, no problems.
Now that the Brooder boxes are done, we focused our attention on designing easy-to-maintain feeding and watering systems.
So at this stage, we're mocking up a bird feeder, a chicken feeder actually. And to do a proof of concept, I designed this quick feeder. I mean, it's not my design, you see it on bird houses all across the nation. But I wanted to make sure it worked with this type of feed and that it would feed out okay. And it works. So now let's get on to building it.
The feed box mirrors bird feeder boxes you can find in all sorts of stores or even online. What's unique about this box is it has an easy to fill lid and it holds enough food to sustain 60 chickens for almost a week. The construction of the box is made out of 3/4 inch plywood, which was left over from a previous build. The lid has a 35-degree slope, so when opened, it can act as a funnel, making refilling the food an easy process.
In order for the lid to close all the way, the hinges were recessed using my Ryobi router. Also, to help the feed go into the box, I used a jigsaw to cut a slope that allowed feed to not be obstructed. No project is complete without an artistic touch to really make it custom built. Here I'm spray painting a rooster logo onto the side of the feeder box.
Now you may be wondering how we're going to clean out this Brooder box, given the only access is through lifting the lids. And with 32 square feet of pine shavings to clean, this would be a pretty time-consuming task to have to scoop out the top. On our first attempt, we used a 1.5 inch hose connected to a cyclone dust collector. Although this provided adequate suction, the pine shavings were too big and the pipe was too restrictive and it clogged frequently. It's not a bad idea, but we just needed to tweak it a bit.
To avoid being frustrated, we took a step back and focused on the watering system. We ordered a complete kit off of Amazon. We'll link it below. First, I built the platform on the Brooder box that would house our watering system. Now I'm going to be installing these watering cups every 4 inches. So let's get started. Now most people will end up cutting the PVC with a hacksaw, but fortunately we have access to the miter saw. I've also set up a stop block at 6 inches so we can make all the repetitive cuts. Not really necessary if we're off by a little bit, but that's just the OCD in me. So before we do the install with the glue, we're going to do a quick mock-up to make sure everything fits the way we want it to go together. Make sure you get the right glue. And also the purple primer. Can't recommend that enough. Without the purple primer, you run a risk of it having a leak. Okay, quick tip. Sometimes you can't find your channel locks, and it's okay to use a pipe wrench to remove these caps. So before we start gluing this up, I made sure that I aligned all the feeding tubes in the proper orientation so that when I take it apart and glue it up, I can get it back to the same spot. So let's start gluing this up. A hole was then drilled into the bucket to connect the hose, which was then attached and connected to PVC pipe. and that pipe would bring water from the bucket to the self-filling watering cups. It was then secured in place inside the brooder box.
At this time, we don't need to utilize both of the brooder boxes. It certainly will be convenient to move all of the chickens into the other box so we can clean out the main one that is used. We built a partition that can easily slide back and forth as needed, giving you access to both or one of the brooder boxes at any time. Take 2 on our cleaning system. We've upgraded to a 4-inch hose, which solved the problem.
So you've seen the video of the dust collection system working on the chips, but we don't want it going into the dust collection system. It's too dirty. So it's gonna go into this can. And in order to do that, we need to make a sawdust separator. So I traced the outside of the lid, but this cover isn't a cover. It's gotta go inside. There'll be another piece of plywood that goes across the top. And in order for this to work, this piece of plywood that goes inside needs to be sealed. So I went to the hardware store and I got some copper pipe insulation. Now this is going to go around the outside diameter of the circle. But if I cut what I traced, it won't fit. So now I'm going to show you how I'm going to fit it so I can only have to cut this circle one time. This is going to be the cover for the dust separator. Really easy. It's cut out of the same sheet of plywood I did the circle with. The only difference is this is going to house the inlet and exhaust for the cyclone separator. It's going to be held on by these handles with a couple bungee cords. Once the glue dries to this, I'll be able to fasten it. I ordered this dust separator kit online. Now I've yet to see a review on it, so I'm not sure how this is going to work with our setting. Now remember, this cyclone separator is for chips that are in a chicken coop and not in a planer, which is traditionally this is where it would be used. Now you saw earlier that I built the container for the separator. Now we're going to add these 45s and this plastic kit to put the whole thing together. It's been 24 hours since I glued this pipe insulation to my piece of plywood for the cover that we hope to seal the cyclone dust separator. And I gotta say, I'm a big fan of Teflon glue. I mean, who would have thought that it would have glued this to the plywood? It allows enough flexibility to be a good seal. And now the next step is to take these fasteners and let's get them installed.
Right now I want to share with you our innovative cleaning system. First we want to take these 60 chicks so they don't get sucked up and move them into this clean box over here. And it's as simple as moving this gate. Now that all of our chickens are in the other brooder box, we're going to clean this one out. I'm going to press this button right here and our vacuum system's going to turn on. It's going to suck all of these wood shavings into this pipe right here. Let's go. Ready? Now what's the worst part about having baby chicks? The cleanup. And this took me about 4 minutes. In our opinion, no project is complete without LED lights. The lighting in this section of our basement is not the best, so we added these LED strip lights we got off Amazon for $10. And it goes without saying, but sometimes painting something can always elevate the project. And we wanted these brooder boxes to resemble our chicken coop, so we painted the boxes black and red to also match the flooring. Speaking of chicken coop, once these 60 silkies are about 8 weeks old, it's time for them to go outside. But where do we put them? Now, if you think these brooder boxes were cool, follow along while we tackle our chicken coop build. Coming up next.